Well, there's certainly a lot of common misconceptions about hypnosis. In fact, a lot of times when people come in for a hypnosis session for the first time, almost everything that they believe about hypnosis/hypnotherapy is incorrect. And that comes from a couple of different things. One is the way that it's portrayed in books and the media. Another is people oftentimes, the only exposure that they've actually got to hypnosis or hypnotherapy is through stage shows. Now, stage shows are hypnosis. I mean, the people that are up on stage are hypnotized, but it's a very different way of hypnotizing people. It's a very different group that you're working with there, and it's a very different purpose. The purpose there is really for entertainment and for the pleasure of the audience. Also gives the people who are on stage an opportunity to perform. And oftentimes you find that people who are the participants on stage are either people who naturally love to be the center of attention, or those people who would like to be, kind of in a Walter Mitty sort of Secret Life type of fashion, would like to be the center of attention. Maybe they're the type of person that very buttoned down kind of life most of the time, but one or two drinks, all of a sudden they become the life of the party. And the stage hypnosis show gives them the opportunity to really perform and really let their inner comedian out for a little bit of a test drive. Hypnosis sessions and hypnotherapy are very different and don't look anything at all like that. There's never a need to cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog. Those very definitely are common misconceptions, but it is useful to deal with a couple of misconceptions that are pretty prevalent, and in almost every case the opposite is exactly true. First, and one of the most common ones, is mind control, is hypnosis mind control. And it's absolutely not. As I said in a previous video, it's actually a very heightened state of concentration, imagination, and focus. It's a state of mind where mental static is reduced to either a minimum or eliminated almost completely. And there's a really good opportunity to go in and do some work. But here's what happens with hypnosis. And I'll use some examples from a stage show just because they're easy and good to do. I was doing a stage show for a corporation. I had one woman who was literally the star of the show. I mean, she was way over the top on everything that we did. The audience loved her. She loved performing for them, right up until the point where I asked them to dance in one particular skit. And she sat down on her chair. I don't remember if she had her hands tucked underneath her legs or not, but she didn't move during that whole skit. And then later, as we moved on to the next one, she was back up performing again. And afterwards, it was a corporate event, so I had an opportunity to kind of mix and mingle with people. She came up to me and said, "Thanks so much, I had a blast." And I'm like, "Oh man, you were phenomenal. You were the star of the show." I said, "But I do have a question for you. When I asked you to dance, you just kind of sat there and didn't move. Suddenly it's like I had suggested that you turn into a statue or something." And I don't remember exactly what it was that she said, but it was something along the lines of she was a fundamentalist evangelical Christian, and in her particular religion, her particular brand of Christianity, they don't dance. So even though she was participating fully the moment that I had a suggestion that asked her to violate a deeply held value, deeply held principle. The trance was, at least in that moment, over. And she was not participating at all. Had another similar thing. One of the things that I do in shows oftentimes is get people to forget a number. And I asked this lady to forget the number 3. And it's kind of funny when you're counting 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. Wait, you've got 6 fingers? I'm only seeing 5 there. Yeah, I'm only seeing 5 there as well. We'll count them again. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. And it's as though 3 had just skipped. And again, this was a very good subject, but failed on this. And it got her a couple of times to come close, but she always was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, had the opportunity to chat with her afterwards and asked her about it. And she said, I'm a CPA. I need the number 3. The second very common misconception is that I won't remember anything that takes place during the hypnosis session, that, there will be amnesia. And with one exception, that's absolutely not true. That misconception also comes from the world of stage shows, particularly in adult-oriented stage shows. People do things that they'd like to forget, so the hypnotist will give them the suggestion that you're not going to remember all of this show or any of the show. You'll have no conscious memory of anything that you did up here on stage this evening. And oftentimes people in a stage show context will accept that suggestion, and that show will simply disappear from their conscious mind, or their ability to go into their unconscious and retrieve that particular memory will disappear. Most of the time, however, a hypnosis session is unbelievably clear, and people's memory of it while they're under trance is crystal clear. It's almost like, sports highlights that you see on the news where the guy says, let's go to the videotape. The memory is typically extremely clear. I have sessions all the time that I do with people who I may have hypnotized months, or in some cases even years ago, and people will say to me, do you remember that very first session that we did? And do you remember the pickle jar? And I'll honestly say to them, no, I don't remember that at all. What was the pickle jar? And she says, well, I was walking through the woods and I was picking up resources, and you told me that, I needed something to put the resources in. So you told me you were going to snap your fingers and immediately a symbol would appear that would remind me of all of the resources that I had available, and you counted to 3 and snapped your fingers, and all of a sudden I was carrying a pickle jar. And that memory for the hypnotic subject will be crystal clear, as though it happened yesterday, or as though they just reviewed that videotape. Because again, hypnosis is a heightened state of concentration, focus, and imagination, and it creates a state of extreme mental clarity. So the opposite of that is actually true. It's not that you forget, it's that your memory of it is actually significantly better. With one exception, as I mentioned earlier, there are people who do come to a hypnotist, engage in hypnosis or hypnotherapy, with the idea, with the goal or the outcome of that particular session to either turn down the vividness of a memory, or in some cases, eliminated all together. And that is a specific outcome that some people have when they enter into a hypnosis session. And under those circumstances, there can be amnesia around certain events that may have happened in the past that people would just rather forget. Common misconception number 3 is that there's going to be a deep level of sleep, that you're going to be almost in like a zombie type state, that you're not going to be able to interact, that you're not going to be able to talk, that you're just going to be sitting there while the hypnotist is giving you this stream, a hypnotic blitz, almost a stream of consciousness to help you solve your particular problems. And actually, if you've seen a hypnosis show, you know that particular one is not true, because those people are acting in a lot of cases quite enthusiastically. If you're not familiar with that, oftentimes when you go into a hypnosis session, you think you're going to go deep down into sleep and be in a kind of a zombie-like state, but that's not true at all. In fact, in our particular brand of hypnosis, conversational hypnosis, Ericksonian hypnosis, that I use in the vast majority of the sessions that I'm doing, it is a highly interactive experience. It's intimate and it's deep and it's tapping into the unconscious mind. But there's a lot of interaction going on. And if you've seen the Sarah Insomnia video that I have posted and is floating around the internet in various places, you'll see that at the very beginning of that session, Sarah was actually completely uptime. We were talking, and she wasn't even consciously aware of the fact that a hypnotic induction was taking place. It's not until about 7 or 8 minutes into the video when I just suggest to her, and you could just close your eyes and relax. But certainly with the work that I do, it's a highly interactive, highly conversational interaction. It can be content-free, and that's worth spending just a little bit of time on, and I'll do that in just a second. But for the most part, I'm asking you what's going on. I'm asking you orienting questions. What are you noticing? What's going on? What's happening now? Are you alone with others? Is it day or night? How old are you? And in order to get those answers back and be able to really understand the experience that you're going through and to be able to guide you through that experience, I need to have those particular answers. Now, there are times that the session is content-free, meaning that there are things that have happened to people that they don't necessarily want to divulge to somebody else, particularly a stranger, particularly maybe a hypnotherapist, even though there is strict confidentiality in any hypnotic session. But many things can be content-free, and it's not necessary that the hypnotist or the hypnotherapist knows exactly what's going on, what you're experiencing, as long as you're experiencing it clearly. And an advanced practitioner of hypnosis and hypnotherapy can work quite easily without knowing every little detail of exactly what it is that's going on in your unconscious, and still guide you through to complete resolution as part of that process. Misconception number 4 is, I can't be hypnotized. Sure you can't. And that very definitely comes from a misconception of what hypnosis is. And when I'm explaining this, as I'll do now, I prefer the word trance. Hypnosis is trance. It's that heightened state of concentration, imagination, and focus that I discussed earlier. And we are in and out of trance all day, every day. If you've been watching a movie and really got lost in the movie, you've experienced trance. If you've read a book and gotten totally lost in that book, you've experienced trance. Driving someplace that you drive to all the time, there's a trance, a specific trance called a highway trance or a road trance that oftentimes that we get in. We're listening to music or a podcast or a book on tape, or maybe we're just lost in thought. And time seems to almost stand still. In fact, almost everybody's had the experience of feeling like they got in the car a second ago, and now all of a sudden they're at their location and they're like, wow, how did that happen? That was that was pretty cool. You turn that over completely to your unconscious mind. Your critical mind was still there. In other words, if you had have gone over a bridge and suddenly saw a sea of lights up in front of you, you would have snapped out of that trance literally in a heartbeat, in a moment. And suddenly you would be looking around, wondering the things that your critical mind is always wondering. What's going on? Why is this happening? Am I safe? Am I at fault? What should I do? What does this mean? Part of our brain is always wanting to know the answers to those particular questions. But when we go into trance, that critical mind just kind of steps to the side a little bit. It's still there. It's still on guard, but it's just not actively involved in the process at that particular moment. So, is it possible for you to be hypnotized? I think the real true answer, it's impossible that from time to time that you're not. I mean, just think about it. If you've ever had the experience of being in a conversation with somebody and going back and forth, and it's quite animated, and suddenly the doors to the elevator open up and you're going to get on. What do? You step on that elevator, you turn around to face the entrance, check to see if your button's been pushed, and if not, you push it. Then you typically look up, see the numbers up there, and count, remaining silently. Why? You're in the elevator trance. Then the doors open, you step out, and what happens? You pick up the conversation exactly where you left off, even if it was a couple of minutes from the time the doors closed until they opened again on your floor. The difference with hypnosis, we are in and out of trance all day, every day. Literally, depending on what time of day it is while you're listening to this, you may have been in and out of trance dozens, perhaps even hundreds of times. Here's the difference. Most of the time that you've been in and out of trance, that's happened accidentally and haphazardly, just as a result of whatever it was that you're doing, that your mind got lost. When you do a hypnosis or hypnotherapy session, you're doing it on purpose and by design, with the goal of achieving a particular outcome during that hypnotic session. Another common misconception is only the weak-minded can be hypnotized, and in my experience this is absolutely not only not true, but the opposite. That's true. My experience is the better your focus, concentration, and imagination are, the easier, more powerfully, more profoundly you can go into trance. If anything, there's more of a direct correlation between high IQ and high level of intelligence and the ability to go into a very, very deep hypnotic trance. Probably, in fact, the only people who can't be hypnotized are people with a very low IQ. And by very low, I mean 70, 75, or 80. People who can't concentrate enough to read a book or carry on a meaningful conversation. Somebody who is wasted cannot be hypnotized. A drink or two doesn't necessarily hurt. In fact, in some cases it can help. Certainly on a stage show, the performing hypnotist never minds if people in his group have had a couple of drinks, but if you're too effed up to be driving, you're probably too effed up to go into a trance. And the third group of people who can't be hypnotized are the challengers. They're the ones that come up and say, "I bet you can't hypnotize me." Now, the truth of the matter is, I can, and most gifted hypnotists, experienced hypnotists, can hypnotize somebody even if they don't want to be hypnotized. Just a whole different set of protocols. But generally speaking, hypnosis is a cooperative process. It's a collaborative process. And it's a process where the hypnotist is serving as your guide through your unconscious and through your experience to help you achieve a specific outcome that you're looking to achieve. So most hypnotists or hypnotherapists, if somebody comes up and says, "Hey, try to hypnotize me, I bet you can't," are just going to say, "All right, no problem, you win." The next common misconception is that you can get stuck, or people will sometimes ask, "Well, what if you have a heart attack?" To which I normally say, "Well, thanks for the vote of confidence in my health. I do try to take care of myself, and obviously in your eyes I'm not doing that good of a job. I could keel over at any moment." But if that were to happen, it would be kind of like that situation that I described earlier with the evangelical fundamentalist who wouldn't dance, or the CPA who wanted to hang on to the number 3. If something like that were to happen, even if you were in a very, very deep state of hypnosis where you literally you were so deep you were not aware of the fact that your hypnotherapist had keeled over, what would happen to you is eventually you would just wake back up again, look around and notice what had happened and take whatever action that you're going to take. But in all probability, what would happen is you would immediately pop out of trance, because your critical mind, just as we talked about with the going over the hill and seeing that sea of red lights, may have stepped aside. It's never going to sleep. It's always there. It's always alert and paying attention to what it is that you do. And the final one, common misconception, is that the hypnotist will get you to do something that is against your will. And again, you'll see this on stage shows where somebody will be hypnotized and they'll give them the watch and their wallet and their jacket and turn it all over. And in street hypnosis, we do this sometimes because it's entertaining and it's a cool part of the show. But generally speaking, one of two things, sometimes both, sometimes just one, is taking place there. Number one is we're implanting the suggestion that the wallet's mine, and the watch is mine, and the jacket's mine. And we're saying, for example, in a moment you're going to recognize me and you're going to see me as though it's the very first time that you're seeing me. And you're going to recognize a week ago you borrowed my wallet, my jacket, and my watch. And it's been eating at you. And you've been wanting to return it, but you haven't ran into me until now. And in a moment, you'll see me for the first time in a week. And remember that you've got my jacket, my watch, and my wallet. And you'll want to return those to me. The feeling that you want to return those to me is growing in you now. And in a second, when you see me, that feeling will reach an absolute peak, and nothing will give you greater joy than being able to return my watch, my wallet, and my jacket back to me, their rightful owner. And there's some other language that we may throw in there, but again, that's a situation where we're creating a lot of leverage, giving the contextual permission to the unconscious mind to play along under those circumstances. If we were to ask you to actually go kill somebody or to rob a bank, that would actually break you from the trance state that you were in. Your critical mind would cause you to wake back up again. This is hypnosis. It's not long-term social conditioning, which we may talk about on a separate video. So those are some of the common misconceptions. And again, the vast majority of the people who are learning about hypnosis and hypnotherapy for the first time have oftentimes all of those, or at least one or two of those, and in pretty much every case, actually, the reverse, the opposite of that is really where the truth lies.